What if the season that broke you was the one that actually built you? What if the silence wasn't God leaving, but God planting? You cried out, begged for answers, questioned everything, and still, heaven seemed quiet. But maybe that silence was carrying more than you realized. Because in your hardest seasons, God didn't disappear. He hid something holy. You've walked through places that nearly swallowed you, seasons where the nights were too long, the prayers felt unanswered, and your heart was too heavy to hold upright. You showed up with a smile, but your soul was cracking beneath the surface, and you wondered, God, where are you? Why is this happening? You assumed silence meant absence, but silence, in the hands of God, is never empty. It's sacred, it's strategic, it's loaded with secrets you can only hear in stillness. And this is the first secret He hid in your hardest season, the revelation of His voice beneath the noise. You thought He wasn't speaking, but really, He was tuning your ears. He let everything else go silent so you would finally notice the whisper. Because God doesn't compete with chaos. He waits until you're quiet enough to listen. 1 Kings 19:12 says that Elijah didn't find God in the fire or earthquake. He came in a still, small voice, and that's exactly what was forming in you during those sleepless nights. You weren't abandoned, you were being recalibrated. But when you're in it, in the furnace, in the pressure, in the isolation, it doesn't feel holy. It feels like punishment, like rejection, like failure. But if you pay attention, you'll realize that pain has a pattern. And for those who stay long enough, who don't run, who don't numb it or medicate it or distract themselves from it, they discover something rare. The second secret, how to see in the dark. You were taught to praise in the light, but He trained you to worship in the shadows. You learned how to move without clarity, how to trust when nothing made sense, how to believe when your prayers echoed back empty. And it was in that space, the one you hated, the one you begged to escape, that your faith grew roots. Not the kind that sway with the weather, but the kind that grip the soil of God's character so deeply, storms can't shake you. That's what was happening. He was growing you down before He could grow you up. And it's easy to miss when all you want is relief, when all you want is an answer, a breakthrough, a sign that He's still with you. But sometimes God hides proof to build faith. Sometimes He'll delay the rescue because He's more interested in you discovering who you are in Him than just getting what you asked for. Because the third secret He hid in that painful season, your identity. You found pieces of yourself in the fire that comfort never revealed. You found out what you really believe about Him, about yourself, about what matters. The trials stripped away every false version of you, the people pleaser, the performer, the perfectionist, the survivor. He let life expose every lie you were carrying, so truth could finally make its home in you. James 1:2-4 says, "Consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work." And that's what was happening. Perseverance was finishing something in you. You were being made whole, not just in public, but in secret. Not just for others to see, but for you to finally believe you're who He said you are. And here's the hardest truth. That fourth secret you couldn't understand back then. God was protecting you by delaying you. That rejection, that closed door, That silence, it wasn't cruelty, it was covering. You thought you were ready, but you didn't see the full picture. You would have settled. You would have walked into something that looked good, but wasn't God. So He let you sit in that hidden place, not to waste your time, but to preserve your destiny. Psalm 84:11 says, "No good thing will He withhold from those who walk uprightly." So if He withheld it, maybe it wasn't good. Not yet. Not for you. Not in the way you imagined. And instead of explaining, He stayed silent, because His no was soaked in love, because His delay was laced with mercy, because His restraint was your protection. But you couldn't see that then, and He knew that. So He sat with you in the dark and never left. Even when you screamed, even when you doubted, even when you were ready to walk away. You don't remember exactly when it happened, but something inside you shifted. You stopped asking, "When will this end?" and started whispering, "God, what are you doing in me?" That question changed everything, because it moved your gaze from escape to encounter, from pain to purpose, from begging to birthing. And that's when the healing began, quietly, slowly, through tears, through worship, when you didn't feel like it, through scriptures you clung to like oxygen. And maybe now, for the first time, you're starting to realize you didn't just survive that season, you were anointed in it. And the oil you carry now, it wasn't cheap. It was crushed out of every no, every loss, every ache you thought would undo you. But it didn't. You're still here. You're still standing. And you're more you than you've ever been. Because God doesn't waste pain. He hides secrets in it. And now you're starting to remember who you are. You see, the fifth secret God hid in your hardest season wasn't just about what you were walking through. It was about who you were walking with. You thought God was distant, cold, maybe even punishing you. But looking back now, you see it differently. You weren't abandoned. You were carried. You weren't overlooked. You were overshadowed by His presence. He was closer than your breath, even when He didn't speak a word. And that's when you learned the kind of intimacy that can't be taught by teaching or caught by crowds, only cultivated in the crushing. This is the kind of nearness that scars your soul in the best way, the kind that ruins you for shallow religion, the kind that silences performance and breaks off striving, the kind where you don't need the stage, the applause, the perfect prayer, just Him, just presence, just peace that doesn't make sense. Philippians 4:7 talks about peace that surpasses all understanding. And you didn't read that in a devotional. You lived it in a storm. You found that unexplainable peace in the middle of nights you didn't think you'd survive. And now, you walk with it. You carry it. Because you know who held you. That's the kind of transformation only hard seasons produce. Because when everything else is stripped away, and the only thing you have is the presence of God, that's when you find out it's the only thing you ever truly needed. And once you've known Him like that, no counterfeit will satisfy you again. No fake intimacy, no surface level comfort, no temporary dopamine disguised as destiny. You've tasted something eternal now. You've seen too much. You've gone too deep. And maybe the reason the shaking came was to force you into that depth. That's the sixth secret. God used the pain to lead you into places you never would have gone on your own. He allowed the heartbreak. He permitted the silence. He didn't stop the loss, because without it, you never would have left the shallow end. You would have built your life around what was safe, not what was sanctified. You would have settled in a place God only meant to pass through. So he shook it, he stripped it, he allowed it to fall apart, not to destroy you, but to drive you to him. And in your desperation, you discovered a door, a narrow gate, a quiet path. And even though no one else saw what was happening, heaven was watching the whole time. You thought you were losing, but you were crossing over. You didn't just change locations. You changed dimensions. You stepped into the deeper waters. You went from knowing about God to knowing Him, from reciting verses to living them, from hearing testimonies to becoming one. And that kind of change, it doesn't come from comfort. It comes from crushing, because the deepest oil flows from the deepest wounds. And some of the most profound anointing you now carry didn't come from your giftedness. It came from your groaning. Romans 8:26 says that the Spirit intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. You remember what that felt like, don't you? Crying out with no language left. Just tears. Just sighs. Just silence. And somehow, heaven translated all of it. Somehow, that became worship. Somehow, that became intercession. Somehow, that became the very altar where God met you. And you wouldn't trade it now. Not really. Because even though it hurt, and it did hurt, what you found in the fire was worth more than anything you left behind. You didn't just survive. You were sanctified, refined, marked. And now you walk differently. You pray differently. You don't run from pain anymore. You discern it. You don't panic when things fall apart. You listen. You've learned to ask not just, God, get me out, but God, what are you doing in this? And that's the shift. That's the fruit. That's the secret. You became someone new in the hardest season of your life, and you didn't even know it while it was happening, because sometimes growth is silent. Sometimes deliverance looks like loneliness. Sometimes miracles wear the mask of mourning. But now you see it. The fruit is undeniable. The peace is real. The authority is tangible. And the fire? It didn't burn you. It branded you. You don't need to explain it to anyone. You don't need to prove it. What you carry speaks for itself. What you walked through now leaks from your worship. It spills into your prayer life. It seeps into your words. It hovers over your silence. The enemy knows it. Hell tried to stop you in that season and failed. Because God didn't just bring you through, He brought you out different. And maybe this is the seventh secret He hid in your hardest season. The one you never expected. He was trusting you with something eternal. Not just survival, not just breakthrough, but legacy. Your pain wasn't just about you. It was about who's coming after you. You were clearing ground for freedom that will ripple through generations. Your yes in that fire broke chains off your bloodline. Your obedience in that pressure shattered ceilings for others. You don't even know the full impact of what your surrender released. But heaven does. And one day, so will you. You never saw it coming, did you? That the worst moments of your life would become the very soil where your greatest strength would grow. That the hardest seasons, the ones that brought you to your knees, the ones you didn't think you'd survive, would become sacred altars where God deposited something you didn't know you were ready to carry. And now you're walking around with holy weight, quiet confidence, battle-won wisdom. Because when God hides a secret in your storm, He never wastes it. He transforms it into strategy. And now, the silence that once tormented you has become your sanctuary. You're not afraid of quiet anymore. You crave it. You don't rush out of the unknown. You explore it. Because you've learned to recognize that voice, that whisper, that stillness that breaks chains and rearranges destinies. And the enemy? He's terrified of that. Because he thought the storm would destroy you, but it only made you more dangerous. That's what happens when you let God do the work in the dark. He shapes weapons in secret. Isaiah 54:17 says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." But what no one tells you is that you become a weapon too. A sharp instrument forged in fire, tempered by trials, and wielded by the hand of heaven. And now, you move differently. You speak differently. You listen differently. Because you carry something forged through obedience, not talent. And you don't flaunt it. You don't need to. You're not trying to prove anything anymore. You know where you've been. You know who carried you. You know what it cost. So when people question your boldness, they don't know about the weeping. When they admire your wisdom, they don't know about the wilderness. When they compliment your faith, they don't know about the nights you almost gave up. You don't need to explain, because the oil speaks louder than words. You've stopped fighting for validation because you've already been vindicated in secret. That's another hidden thing God gave you. Unshakable identity. One that wasn't built in applause or performance. One that was forged in raw surrender, day after day, when no one saw, no one celebrated, and no one clapped. But God did. Heaven did. And now, you carry the kind of identity that doesn't crumble under pressure, the kind that doesn't bend when people leave, the kind that doesn't crack when things don't go as planned. You've become someone the old you wouldn't recognize, and that's a miracle, because the old you needed people to like you. The old you chased things that looked successful, but starved your spirit. The old you compromised truth to avoid tension. But now, you walk in truth, even when it costs you comfort. You choose obedience, even when it isolates you. You say yes to God, even when you don't understand Him, because you trust Him. That's what hard seasons produce. Trust you can't fake. You've seen His character up close now. You've wrestled with doubt and come out with revelation. You've questioned His silence and found His faithfulness. You've watched what you thought you needed fall apart, and somehow you're still here, still breathing, still believing, still burning with a fire that didn't come from a conference or a post or a moment of hype. This one came from ashes, from midnight sobs, from fasting when your flesh wanted to numb, from praying when your words failed. This is why you can't be talked out of your calling anymore. You may still have questions, sure. You may still feel weak some days. But the shift has already happened. The foundation is already laid. The depth is already there. And because of that, there's no going back. You've tasted the goodness of God in the valley. You've known Him as provider when you had nothing, as healer when you were broken, as defender when no one else saw what you were going through. And now, even in the small things, you hear Him, you sense Him, you trust Him. Because when He didn't give you the answer, He gave you Himself. And that was enough. That will always be enough. You see, the biggest secret God hid in your hardest seasons wasn't a thing. It was Himself. And now, He's not just someone you worship. He's someone you know. And that knowledge that intimacy, that depth, it can't be bought. It can't be taught. It has to be walked out, with blood, with tears, with obedience that doesn't make sense, with faith that feels like free fall. And you did it. You didn't just talk about trust. You lived it. You didn't just post scriptures. You clung to them. You didn't just sing about breakthrough. You bled for it. And now you're standing in the glow of something sacred. Not flashy, not loud, but undeniable. And you know, deep down, this wasn't about survival. This was about preparation. You're not just coming out stronger. You're coming out sent. You've been through the fire, and now you carry it. Not as something that consumes, but as something that illuminates. You're not carrying trauma. You're carrying truth. You're not dragging your past behind you. You're walking forward with authority, because when God hides a secret in your hardest season, it's not just for you, it's for someone else's deliverance too. And that's the next thing you didn't expect. God entrusted you with a testimony that wasn't meant to stay in your journal. It's meant to set people free. You thought this pain was just something to survive. But in heaven's strategy, pain becomes platform. Not for ego, not for influence, but for freedom, for light, for breakthrough. You've got keys now to prison doors you used to sit behind. And now, you're not just healed, you're a healer. You're not just free, you're a freedom carrier. You never saw it coming, but now you realize it. The scars you tried to hide are actually signposts of God's power, and the very story the enemy tried to bury you with, that's the one God's using to break chains in others. Revelation 12:11 says, "They overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony." That's why your voice matters. That's why the enemy fought you so hard. He didn't want you healed. He didn't want you whole, because whole people testify, and testifying people disrupt darkness. You can feel it, can't you? The fire rising in your chest, the tears that aren't from grief this time, but from gratitude, from reverence, from the weight of knowing that nothing was wasted, that every breakdown became a doorway. Every "why, God?" became "thank you, God," because now you understand. God didn't just show up in the fire. He was the fire. And now, He's inside of you. This is the kind of fire the world needs. Not hype, not noise, not performance, but people who've bled for their breakthrough and still stayed faithful. People who've buried dreams, but refused to bury their worship. People who've walked through hell and didn't come out bitter. They came out blazing. That's you. That's what's been rising in you. You didn't ask for it, but God chose you for it, because He knew what was hidden in your hardest season was worth carrying into the world. And now the question isn't, why did I go through that? The question is, who needs what I now carry? Because you're not carrying pain anymore. You're carrying perspective. You're not echoing what you've heard. You're pouring out what you've lived. And people can feel it. They can sense it. They lean in when you speak. Not because of your tone or your charisma, but because there's oil on your words. Oil from crushing. Oil from process. Oil from nights you thought you wouldn't make it. And that oil? It's sacred. It's costly. So guard it. Don't pour it where it won't be honored. But don't hoard it either. It wasn't meant to stay in the flask. It was meant to pour. Pour into dry places. Pour into tired hearts. Pour into the next generation. Pour until chains break. Until altars are built again. Until hungry people encounter the God who carried you. You've been wondering when you'll feel ready, but here's the truth. Readiness isn't a feeling, it's a realization. And if you're reading this, watching this, weeping through this, you're already carrying what you need. You don't need permission. You already have oil. You don't need a platform. You already have presence. What was done in secret has shaped who you are now. And heaven says, it's time. It's time to release what's been refined in you. It's time to stop calling your breaking just a hard season and start calling it what it really was, a divine assignment. It's time to stop asking for signs and start walking in the authority you already carry. It's time to step forward with fire in your bones, truth in your mouth, oil on your hands, and heaven at your back. Because what God hid in that painful place, He's about to pour out in public, not for your glory, but for His. And this time, the world won't see your pain. They'll see His power through you. This is the part where everything starts to make sense. Not because all your questions were answered, but because your spirit finally sees the purpose behind the pain. You realize now, you were never being punished. You were being prepared. Every delay was a setup. Every silence was a summons. Every heartbreak was heaven rearranging your foundation for something unshakable. And now, you carry something sacred, not just a testimony, a mantle, not just wisdom, weight, not just survival, strategy. God didn't just rescue you, He reformed you. He didn't just comfort you, He commissioned you. And you can feel it in your voice, in your walk, in your spirit. When you pray, you're not the same. You're not numb. You're not lost. You're lit with holy fire, with heavenly insight, with something that can't be taught, only revealed. You were forged in the fire for such a time as this. And now you're dangerous, not to people, but to darkness. You've become the very thing hell feared you'd discover. Someone fully surrendered, fully awake, fully aware of what they carry. Someone who no longer needs applause to move. Someone who doesn't bow to fear, who doesn't beg for platforms, who doesn't blend in just to be accepted. Someone who knows their identity, not because of who they are, but because of whose they are. And what was once your pit has become your pulpit, not because you wanted it, but because God trusted you with it. He trusted you with pain because He knew you'd steward it into purpose. He trusted you with wilderness because He knew you'd worship through it. He trusted you with pressure because He knew you'd come out with power. You didn't fold. You didn't curse Him. You didn't give in. You stayed. You wept. You wrestled. But you stayed. And now, the secret oil of your hidden season is about to be poured out like never before. But it's not about your name. It never was. This was always about Him, about His faithfulness, His mercy, His timing, His glory, His kingdom. And if you're wondering what to do with what you've been through, the answer is simple. Pour it. Pour it into the ones who are still in the dark. Pour it into the ones who are ready to give up. Pour it into the generation that's looking for real, not religious. Pour it into the hungry, the broken, the ones who don't even know what they need yet, because you've walked through the kind of pain that gives you a language for the hurting. And now you speak the dialect of deliverance. Don't hide it. Don't mute it. Don't shrink it. This oil cost you too much to keep quiet. And the beautiful thing, you don't even have to try. You just have to be. Be present. Be yielded. Be led. because the oil flows through the surrendered, and you are surrendered now, not perfect, but positioned, not flawless, but filled, not loud, but lit. You carry the secrets of a season no one else saw. You hold the revelation of a God who met you in the fire and never left. And now, every time you walk into a room, darkness recognizes it. Every time you pray, heaven leans in. Every time you speak, chains start shaking, not because of you, but because of what God hid in you when you thought you were losing everything. And now, it's time. It's time to stop surviving and start releasing. It's time to stop rehearsing the pain and start walking in the purpose. It's time to let the oil flow. So go. Go and burn with the fire that didn't kill you. Go and speak with the boldness that only pain can teach. Go and worship like someone who met God in the valley and came out with a sword. Go and carry what religion can't manufacture and the world can't explain, the oil of someone who's been through it and still stayed faithful. This was never just a season. This was a sanctification. This was a summoning. This was a birthing room for your mantle. God hid his greatest secrets in your hardest places. And now it's time to pour them for his glory, for their freedom, for such a time as this.